just going to take a quick look at the form around Don Corleone, which is 21st in the order of entry for the Blue Diamond on Saturday. Got this one as another live chance. If we have a look at the market at the moment, Don Corleone is 11.0 and 3.5. I'm just going to show you a couple of different form lines of why I've got an interest in this horse. Okay, Don Corleone. He's very well bred by Extreme Choice out of Snip Zoo. Peter and Paul Snowden, they know how to train a good 2-year-old. Comes into it potentially having its third career start. It's its debut win over Kundalini, where they put a big gap back to coincide in a very strong 150k 2-year-old handicap at Randwick on the 21st of January that sparks interest. Came from 7th that day, strong through the line, suggesting it'll improve out to 1200. Not too concerned about its 2.7 length 4th to Cafe Millennium, because I want to show you a form line that suggests that it wasn't at its best that day. So let's go and have a look at Don Corleone. Don Corleone, the second horse home to Don Corleone, Kundalini, very well bred by I'm Invincible out of the top class Rude Awakening. Then come out and ran third to Learning to Fly, beaten 1 length after it was beaten 0.73 by Don Corleone. That was in the race that Learning to Fly improved in again off its Widden win in the Millennium, where it flashed big closing pass from well back to win that day. The third horse home, beaten 3.7, was then beaten 25 by Learning to Fly. We know that's not a true form line purely through the second horse home behind Don Corleone. The form that we want to go back further and look at for it was the second to Barber, and this is what also puts Barber out of the Blue Diamond. It ran second to Barber, beaten 0.39 in the Kirkham. Now, you're going to say, but it was then beaten 3.8 by Barber in the Golden Gift. But the big difference is when it took on Don Corleone, it led, used its normal pace race pace style. When it ran second to Barber, beaten 0.39, it also led. When it got beaten, well beaten by Barber in the Golden Gift, it was actually ridden upside down from the back of the field. So I'm prepared to put a line through that run and say the merit isn't true there. So the 2 runs that are true for the third horse home behind Don Corleone are that run, where it was beaten 3.7 by Don Corleone, and that's a line back to Barber, where it was only beaten 0.39 by Barber, and also suggesting that given scope for improvement between this run to that run, that further enhances the merit around Don Corleone knocking off it by 3.7 compared to Barber only beating it by 0.4 of a length. Okay, and as you can see, in this win of Don Corleone's, big margins to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th, adding good depth to the form. The 4th horse home behind Don Corleone then came out and won a good race at Canterbury over Vomo Island and Tenhauser. That race has turned into a good little form race, even though it was a midweek race for 55k tag. Vomo Island, I've got a bit of an opinion of it. The 6th horse or the 5th horse home behind Don Corleone, beaten 5.19, then came out and was only beaten 6.5 by Cafe Millennium in the Piero. So that's a 1.4 length difference. And if we go back to Don Corleone back here, you'll see Don Corleone was then beaten 2.7 by Cafe Millennium. That's what tells me that run behind Cafe Millennium, it wasn't at its peak, and it's got more scope for improvement. So that's the 5th horse home, High King. And then the 6th horse home behind Don Corleone was third to He-Man in a trial. And prior to that was only beaten 0.59 of a length by Mahaba, which come out and won the Talon on Saturday in Melbourne, which is another one of the lead-up races to the Blue Diamond. That's another one. That's another line that franks the Don Corleone line to suggest that the Sydney 2-year-old form's better than the Melbourne 2-year-old form. The 7th horse home was only beaten 1.2 by Desperately in a trial prior to that, which is another decent form reference. And the 8th horse home, which was beaten 7.4 by Don Corleone, was only beaten 1.9 by Capital Heart in a trial prior to that. And if we take a line through that line, Capital Heart was only then beaten 2.8 by Basis Loaded on debut. And Basis Loaded, so that was Don Corleone about 3.5, 4 in front of Basis Loaded. And then Basis Loaded ran second to Mexico, beaten 0.5 in a trial and 3.5 behind King's Gambit at its first trial. So that's a lot of ticks in the corner of Don Corleone coming into the Blue Diamond on Saturday. If they decide to go to the Blue Diamond, it's going to be a big chance. And at the price of 11.0 at 3.5 gives us a good line back to Learning to Fly, and hence Steel City as well, which we've got highly rated as a serious Blue Diamond chance. So Don Corleone's starting to look a live chance in the Blue Diamond on Saturday, 11.0, 3.5. Thanks.